Hello, my name is Mike McKenzie, and today I'm going to present to you my research on Instagram and social capital. Instagram has rose to the top of the social media food chain. According to amazing Instagram statistics, Instagram has over 800 million monthly active users, 500 million daily active users, and 34% of US millennials are using Instagram daily. This puts the platform in third place behind only Facebook and YouTube in regards to active users. Thanks to camera-equipped phones, which have become cheap and readily available, it is easier for users to produce and share content than ever before. Despite the platform's widespread popularity, does it come with a cost? My research will be focused on finding out whether or not the way people present themselves via Instagram affects how people perceive each other as a person, and does this affect their lives? Key variables I will be researching are impression management and social capital. Impression management is defined as a process in which people attempt to influence the perceptions of other people. In this case, how we try to influence people about ourselves via Instagram. Social capital, on the other hand, is about social relations that have productive benefits such as friendships and relationships. So, in this presentation, I will first discuss previous research done on the effects social media has on people using the various platforms. I will then examine people's impression management and social capital on Instagram through a survey I've conducted. Lastly, I will evaluate the compiled research on this study and state whether or not the study and research supported or disregarded my hypothesis. A study conducted by Yang, PhD published author in cyberpsychology, behavior, and social networking, found that there was indeed a link between loneliness and Instagram use. The importance of this study is what the research discovered. After conducting the study, researchers discovered that online interaction makes users feel more connected and less lonely. Also, this study stated that the relationship between Instagram interaction and lower loneliness was consistent with past findings, showing that using social media to interact with others is related to greater psychological well-being. This research supports my study because if Instagram can affect your emotions and well-being, why can't it affect your social capital? Another article I researched was from Fox and Vandemia, published authors in cyberpsychology, behavior, and social networking as well. This article discusses selective self-presentation and social comparison. This research suggests that women are highly susceptible to a thing called objectification theory. Objectification theory states that women are conditioned to take an outsider's perspective of themselves and critically evaluate their self-worth based on social standards such as prioritizing one's appearance. Also, this research discusses the way we compare ourselves on Instagram. There's a thing called downward social comparison, which involves evaluating people that you feel superior to. This can lead to a boost in self-confidence. Then there is upward social comparison, which involves evaluating people we feel inferior to. This can lead to an anxiety and depression. This study relates perfectly to my idea that impression management on Instagram may carry over and affect your social capital in person. The last article I researched was by Hoke and Rosini, published authors in Computers in Human Behavior. This article discussed how imaginary audience can affect someone's impression management online. This is important to my research because it shows that impressions are altered to fit the image of someone else's perception of you, thus changing who you are as a person to fit the ideal impression of the viewer. This is important to my research because this can possibly affect one's social capital in reality because you aren't being your true self. There are a few conclusions that can be drawn from previous research. First, emotions and psychological well-being can be altered while using social media. And secondly, impression management and social comparison is very prevalent among social media users and can cause self-identity confusion. One main limitation of previous research is that the articles that I could find on Instagram and social media focused mainly on how people manage their social media accounts and what emotions and psychological effects that has on a person. With that in mind, this study aims to test one hypothesis. My hypothesis is Instagram affects the perceptions of ourselves and other people through impression management, therefore affecting social capital among 18 to 28-year-olds. In order to take part in this survey, participants had to have Instagram and be between the age ranges of 18 and 28. A younger sample of the population was taken due to the fact social media is probably more prevalent in their lives compared to the older generations. There was a total of 79 participants that took this survey. Regarding gender, 67.8% were female, 31.6% were male, and 2.6% were either transgender or non-disclosed. This study consisted of a 5-to-1 Likert scale. Selecting 5 meant you strongly agreed towards a statement. Selecting 1 meant you strongly disagreed towards a statement. This study also had 2 yes or no questions, along with a question about the amount of time a participant spent on Instagram. My survey consisted of 19 total questions and statements. And the analytic approach I took was to gather an overall average of the questions related to each variable, with my variables being impression management and social capital. Impression management is one of the key variables I researched in my study. Its importance in social media is very prevalent throughout my previous research. Impression management scored a 2.7 average in the 6 questions that were asked related to that variable. What this average portrays is that impression management is not a large factor on Instagram. It reflects that, yes, impression management is present on Instagram, but not as much as an influencer on social capital as anticipated. Social capital, on the other hand, scored even lower, scoring an average of 2.25 in the 10 questions that were asked related to the variable. My hypothesis falls short when it comes to the importance or emphasis of Instagram as a key factor for social capital. Take, for example, one of the research statements. Instagram is important in maintaining friendships, scoring an average response of 1.96. This score says that friendships aren't maintained through Instagram, which concludes that people do not put much emphasis on Instagram to manage their social capital. Another example of this is the response to the statement, "I feel left out when I'm not active on Instagram." This statement only scored an average of 1.87. That score symbolizes the lack of importance we attach to Instagram. It just is not as important as it needed to be to greatly affect someone's social capital. Lastly, the statement, "I form lasting impressions of people based off their profiles," scored an average response of 2.27. Impression management and perception are key to this hypothesis. Without lasting change that can affect social capital, how can my hypothesis stand? From this research, I believe it's safe to say that Instagram will not drastically affect your social capital. However, in some cases, Instagram can cause changes in one's perceptions and emotions, as past research confirms. Some limitations, starting with the sample from my research. I believe that the research would vary much more with a larger sample size than 79. My study only shows a very small niche of people from a Central American state. If this study was larger and covered a broader audience, the research would have definitely been more determining of whether Instagram affects social capital. Along with the size of the study, the gender imbalance could have played a role in how the research turned out. The balance of the gender was 65.8% female and 31.6% male. For future research, I would focus on gathering a larger and broader sample to get a more clear reflection of the research. Also, I would incorporate interview questions to gather more in-depth answers when needed. In closing, I believe this study is very important as society moves forward into the age of social media and technology. The effects of social media have been thoroughly researched, discovering implications like loneliness, selective presentation, and objectification theory as a result of using social media platforms that affects one's emotions and perceptions. Whether Instagram affects a person's social capital is still up for debate without conclusive data. What this study can tell us is that there is a case that Instagram may in fact affect one's social capital. To what extent is undetermined. Instagram has over 800 million monthly active users, 500 million daily active users, and 34% of US millennials use Instagram daily. If social capital is in fact affected by Instagram, it could change the perceptions of millions of people around the world. Thank you.